Good evening and welcome to another Barry Hawkins Live. What are we talking about tonight? Well, we are on the third and final of the roles people play in effective development process at the team level. We've covered the team steward. After that, we went through key aspects of the product steward, and now we come to the third role that people play. And what is that? They are team members. Now, did I just say the most insultingly simplistic thing ever in having a role named team members? No, at least I hope not. And as we talk through that, hopefully you'll come to feel the same way in the event that you're healthily skeptical right now. So the team steward stewards the health and effectiveness of the team, has sufficient domain knowledge to know what good and healthy looks like for the kind of work that that team does, and they steward that health and effectiveness predominantly through the development process and the development cycle. The product steward stewards the vision, backlog, and roadmap for the product or products that a team works on. They engage the team, the whole team, to inform the approach, effort, and timelines for the work that they are pursuing, and then drive stakeholder alignment so that as priorities shift, expectation management is being addressed proactively. And that's what the product steward does. Now, the team members, what they do, how they fit into this is they are the ones whose skills go into making that work happen. It doesn't matter if you're super healthy and effective and you have a great vision if there aren't the people to actually inform the approach and do the work. And the team members are the cross-functional individuals, the cross-functional disciplines that make up that team. So in a mainstream traditional development setting, that would be usually different types of engineering, full stack engineers, back-end engineers, mobile, web. That's the software engineering that predominantly exists on those teams. But then alongside them, you have QA persons, and those might be more traditional QA, or it might be people more of the SDET, software development, engineer, and test. And then UX persons, UX designers, and sometimes visual designers, depending. And those people make up a more traditional game team, or traditional development team. Got ahead of myself, because in game development teams, the skill sets are a little more diverse because the types of engineering and the specializations are a bit more nuanced and specific. And in addition to QA team members, UX designers, you also have game designers and specific types of art related to 3D animation, all the different things that go into making video games. But those are the team members, all of the people with those skills that it takes to take an outcome from concept to live. So when we look at team members and specifically what role are they playing in effective development process, there are a few key responsibilities that they have. So let's look at those. First, an effective cross-functional team member in a development team, the first thing that they do is, as we look at the outcomes that we're pursuing, those that are a ways off, and even when we bring them into a development cycle to break down in tasks, team members are providing possible approaches and level of effort. So for a given outcome where we're saying, like, the user is able to do this, this is the kind of user they are, and this is why they care about that. There's an effective team members will not simply say, well, that's too hard, or, oh, that's easy, or, just basically provide a closed-ended answer that conveys that there's one possible way to make an outcome happen. Instead, the effective team member is presenting multiple options. Well, we could do this, or this, and they have different sizes. So for the impact that we're going for, Which one of these do we think we want to pursue? And presenting those multiple options is a catalyst to effective conversation with the rest of the team, with the team steward, with the product steward. It allows us to explore alternatives, meaning that, there's more than one way to go about accomplishing an outcome. And so in light of that, let's have great effective dialogue to explore those alternatives. And then additionally, the effective team member, as other team members are providing their input, or that first team member talks about different possibilities, the effective team member is also asking clarifying questions. Well, what do you mean by that? Or when you say, we could do it this way or that way, can you unpack that a bit more for me? So that's part of that, being an effective, member of the team, is be open-minded, help, both for yourself and for the team as a group, help us explore multiple alternatives. Let's have good discussion. Let's not just go with the first thing that someone assumes, or what you think that, the person who wrote that user story meant. Say what you think they meant, and then ask clarifying questions. Is that what you actually meant? Second, in each of the development process events that are part of the development cycle, there's an intended interaction between members of the team, and an effective team member is actively and healthily engaging in those interactions. They've taken the time to understand, or if they don't understand, they maintain a spirit of curiosity and ask, so what are we going for with the daily stand-up? Or with cycle planning, what's the intent there? What are we trying to come away with? And in asking those questions, as they ask those questions and as they engage in those events, they start to understand the why, and they can not only engage themselves, but also model what effective behavior for the other team members looks like, and for new team members who may be coming from a different team, maybe coming from a different company, helping them to see, like, this is the type of engagement and interaction we're going for. So, for example, in backlog grooming, when you're looking at the top 2 times your throughput or velocity in the backlog, knowing that these are the things that are most likely going to be pulled into the next development cycle, the effective team member comes into that meeting knowing our intent in backlog grooming is not to have people captive in a room or a Zoom call for an hour. Our intent is to say, hey, as a team, we know that we're coming into the next cycle, and we want to have the most prepared, highest chance for success that we could possibly have coming into the next cycle. So to that end, let's look at that top of our work queue and ask ourselves, are we clear on these outcomes, who they're for, and why those people care about them? Are we clear on the acceptance criteria? Have we had enough discussion and dialogue on the level of effort? That is, the story point size. Have we had conversations around how we think we might approach implementation? Because at this point, when it's at the top of the queue, right before being pulled in, we've had at least some conversation around how we think we'll approach this, because that's part of what helps us know how big we think it is. And so, that's the type of engagement in backlog grooming. And then in cycle planning or sprint planning, they're coming in and they're active and engaged. They're not waiting for the team steward or the scrum master to poke them and prod them. Can you task that out? I need you to put a task up for your part in that story. They're not having to be dragged along in the process. They're active and engaged. If anything, they might even be getting ahead of the group a bit and are being asked, like, oh, hang on, let's get through the rest of this. It's great that you want to start tasking out the next story and do a little bit of that, but just don't get too far into it, because QA and UX are still tasking out what their part in that story is going to be. So just understanding, like, all of these events, all of the recurring events in a development process are intended to accomplish very specific interactions with one another. Another example, the daily stand-up. The daily stand-up meant intended to be that focused huddle on where are we at with the work we've committed, what was accomplished yesterday, and what handoffs and interactions need to happen today in order to keep things moving. And if anyone is stuck or impeded, proactively surfacing that so that we can ensure that people get obstacles out of the way so that the work can continue to flow. It's that sort of active engagement in each of those events and playing the part that a team member has to play. That's what effectiveness looks like in engaging in the development process. Lastly, the effective team member overall, they are both within themselves and in assisting other team members and the rest of the team, they are actively contributing to building shared understanding among the team. Because the more that a team understands the work that they're pursuing, the products that they are responsible, or the part of a product that they're responsible for evolving, and the more that they understand how the different cross-functional skills on a team interplay with one another, the more they're going to have shared understanding. And that shared understanding makes for better perspective. It makes for more holistic evaluation of level of effort and possible approaches in the work that's in the work queue. And that just generally equips a team to be able to be more effective overall. Now, what does that look like? I think actively being curious about other disciplines. When a given, when a member of another discipline says, well, I think this story would be a 13 because this is what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to do a full regression pass. It's just simply asking, hey, so when you having never done a full regression pass, can you help me understand what is that? Because just tell me what all is involved. And oftentimes, and it's usually a QA member of the team who's talking about a full regression pass, and it can be very informative to have one of those members of the team unpack for you, well, every time we do even one small change in this area of the product, this is everything, and this is all the possible permutations and scenarios that I then have to run through to ensure they aren't, they didn't inadvertently get broken. That can be a very eye-opening conversation. And again, that's where shared understanding helps us all. And then likewise, when someone asks you, when you're on the other end of that interaction, when someone is asking you that clarifying question, don't take it as an attempt to undermine your credibility or to question your capability. We're simply all trying to understand one another better. And it may even be that in the course of answering a question, someone says, oh, did you know we actually have a shared library for that? And the thing is, if you didn't know, and in the course of someone asking you questions and then having dialogue with you, you come to know about that shared library, for example, that's not a bad thing. That's you knowing more about how you're expected to approach your craft and norms and practices that the organization has decided to pursue and value. So it's not a bad thing. Man, again, that all is more natural when everyone's engaged, everyone's asking clarifying questions, and is having clarifying questions asked of them, right? So it doesn't feel one-sided in that way. So generally, the effective team member is engaged, helping people understand what they do, and working to better understand what other people do. And that's effective team membership in a nutshell. Let's see what questions people have this episode. Looks like we have a few submitted questions, or a couple. What is your number one piece of advice for team members? I would say that if you're on a team where you have a team steward and a product steward who are making the effort to engage with you and try to have you and the rest of the team engage in active dialogue, my top piece of advice would be to engage, and don't take that for granted. So many people on development teams don't have a team steward and or product steward who are making that effort. For them, good is just rehearsing rote mechanics of usually some subpar incarnation of Scrum, and they're not trying to have people talk. They're just trying to turn the crank and assign tasks to people and not really have people dialogue. If you're in a group where someone's trying really hard to make this a reality, just don't take it for granted, because it's rarer than you might think. All right. What are some common team member anti-patterns? All right. So anti-patterns that team members commonly exhibit in my experience. Well, first let me explain the term anti-pattern, because I don't want to assume that everyone knows that. So in software engineering and software development, we talk about patterns. We've talked about patterns for a long time, just like you talk about patterns in anything else, in, tailoring, crafting, what have you. Just as a pattern is a set of instructions or practices for someone to follow that you're recommended to follow, anti-patterns are instructions or a set of behaviors that you're not recommended to follow. And so when it comes to being an effective team member, the number one anti-pattern I see is passivity. That is, team members who aren't engaged, you have to drag answers out of them. They look like you're asking them to have an oatmeal enema, in cycle planning. It's like you're asking for their input, like, how do you think you should approach this? And, well, I'll do some JavaScript. Well, I would hope so. But can you actually talk about what you're going to do? And how long you think that's going to take? Because we have to task out all this work. So yeah, the passivity and honestly, the passivity that's really passive aggressive behavior, that's an anti-pattern. Another one is that I see pretty often, more often than I would like, is people who exhibit a pattern of perpetual complaint without action. That is, they'll talk to you all day long about what they think is wrong with the team and what the other people on the team are doing, or what's wrong with their department or the organization. But when you talk about things within their sphere of influence, within the agency that the team has, and ask, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do to make this better? You get nothing. You mostly get resignation or just redoubling on the complaint. I have never seen that be particularly helpful for the individual or the team, and by extension, the organization. So yeah, don't complain. Don't call out complaints and then not be willing to have dialogue around what we can do to address them. In a nutshell. Lastly, an anti-pattern, for a team member, exhibiting a pattern of disrespect or contempt for the other disciplines. If you're engineering, for example, constantly taking on what QA has to say or what UX has to say, not cool, not helpful. Same for any other team member. Product stewards who pressure team members for lower story point estimates or shorter tasks. Surely you could do that, in an hour. Or I saw you do one of those. You did one of those before in 2 hours. Like, how come it's like, and so why is it that much now? Why is it 4 hours now? Not helpful. Those tenets of like assume positive intent, and everyone's doing the best they can with what they have and where they are. And if you're concerned with the responses you're getting from someone, ask clarifying questions and see what support they need. if it's a given team member who's having trouble with tasks, maybe pair them with someone of, the same discipline, and, see if by doubling up, can they maybe learn something, or, have some breakthroughs around how to approach the work in a more effective way. So yeah, I guess at the end of the day, when it comes to being an effective team member, I guess like kindergarten rules and, the golden rule applies, do unto others, as you would have them do unto you. Be nice, be curious, be candid, but be kind. And generally I've seen that work out well for folks. You can learn a lot too, and you can end up on a team that gets a lot more done on average. So that is effective team membership. If you have found value here, please do remember to like and subscribe and click that notifications bell so that you can know about future videos as they're uploaded and when live stream events are happening. And my name's Barry Hawkins again. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.